17 May 1945. Munich, Maxvorstadt. In a notebook torn from an office ledger, a 36-year-old bookkeeper named Carl M. writes in pencil, "We will build our peace on what we agree not to say." It is a dangerous sentence. It could not have been spoken aloud. The neighbors listened. The soldiers listened. The rubble had ears. But he writes it anyway, in a room without glass, with plaster dust on his cuffs and a cup of dandelion coffee on the sill. The war has ended, he tells himself. Another begins. The streets are a geography of void. What had been houses are absent. Blocks are mapped by chimneys, by rings of scorched brick. The municipal records count it because municipal records must count. In August 1945, an occupation report estimates 400 million cubic meters of rubble in Germany. The report has its own language: debris per capita, cubic meters per woman, a ledger of broken things. They call them Trümmerfrauen. Women with headscarves, with baskets, with bent backs and picks. They climb the heaps and clear them stone by stone. They pass bricks hand to hand, scrape plaster, stack what can be used. In winter their fingers crack. In summer the lime burns their palms. It is labor without speech. It is a rhythm that fills a silence. After a time, a sound emerges from the city, the chink of brick, the rattle of wheelbarrows, the low talk of women who do not name what they saw. In his notebook, Carl writes the names of the missing as though he might call them back. His brother, last a corporal near the Oder. His cousin, evacuated from the east with 2 children, train lost. A co-worker from the municipal tax office who refused the party until 1938, then joined, then disappeared from the office in late April 1945 and is not on any list. The mathematics of absence is precise and heartless. The German Red Cross will later report millions of inquiries to the Suchdienst, the search service. Train stations are boards covered in photographs. The photographs are faces cut from family albums. Note pinned below: last seen 7 March in Breslau, 12 March in Stettin, 26 April in Berlin. Each note reduces a life to coordinates. Each coordinate points to a gap. The soldiers come first as rumor, then as boots on glass. The Americans enter Munich in late April. They are young. They are tired. Their orders are clear: non-fraternization, curfews, disarmament, confiscation of radios that can reach beyond the city. Posters with times: no one out after 9 p.m. or 10 in summer. Hands up. Papers ready. There are street patrols and searches for hidden weapons and party officials. There are trucks with soldiers laughing and taking photographs of piles of swastika flags like seaweed thrown up after a storm. The fear is a presence. It is the cousin of hunger. There are rumors of retribution, of assaults, of summary justice. Some take their party badges to the river at night. Some burn them in stoves and breathe the acrid ash of a symbol turned to smoke. Some do not sleep near the windows. Many do not speak at all when a military jeep slows near their door. The occupation files record the rules. Non-fraternization relaxes by September 1945 in the American zone. It remains stricter in the British zone and harshest under Soviet administration. In the French zone, there is a different grammar of suspicion, a different ledger of requisitions. But everywhere there is arithmetic. The arithmetic of policies. The arithmetic of meals that must be delivered to soldiers who can requisition what is there when the warehouse is empty. Hunger arrives slowly and then suddenly. The summer of 1945 is a harvest of paper. Ration cards are printed and stamped. Calories are assigned like guilt. Adults are categorized by work type: heavy laborers, light laborers, pensioners. The politics of the stomach is written in grams: bread, fat, meat, sugar. The mathematics of hunger is not complicated, and it is devastating. The official ration in some cities drops below 1,200 calories per day in 1946. The hunger winter of 1946–47 strikes like a second siege. There is cold in the bones. There is coal stolen from trains in the night. There are bicycle journeys to farms with pillowcases of linen and family silver, with wedding porcelain traded for potatoes and lard. They call them hamsterfahrten. It sounds like a joke a child might tell. It is not a joke. It is the arithmetic of survival, linen for calories, a ring for a sack of rye. Carl stands in line for bread and tries not to look at the hands. The hands tell stories. Hands that tremble from hunger. Hands with dirt ground into the knuckles from rubble. Hands with a white stripe where a ring used to be. In his notebook he writes the day's numbers. Bread 250 g, fat 200 g, sugar not available. Potatoes on the black market for cigarettes. A pack of Lucky Strikes equals so many eggs. A Chesterfield is a haircut. A carton is a suit. The city is a bazaar of damage. The black market has quarters and codes. Near Munich's Viktualienmarkt, a man with a scar on his cheek sells cigarettes. He speaks in riddles and gestures with his nonchalant cigarette as though he is the one with the time and you are the one who must hurry. He trades in luck and threat. He knows who was in the party and who is now in the line. He knows the arithmetic of need. When there is nothing left to trade but a bed, the city looks away. The occupation reports note the rise in illicit trade and moral offences. The words are antiseptic, the lives are not. Denazification comes on sheets of paper. The fragbogen is long, up to 131 questions. Name, date of birth, positions held, memberships, donations, who were your superiors, who were your subordinates, what did you read, which rallies did you attend. The paper seems endless. The lines demand to be filled with something that can be filed, cross-checked, and stamped. The fear is in the ink. In the American zone, the law for liberation from National Socialism and militarism takes effect in March 1946. The Spruchkammern, the denazification tribunals, are established to sort people into categories: Hauptschuldige, major offenders, Belasteti offenders, Middelbelasteti offenders, Midlaufer followers, Entlasteti exonerated. The categories have weight. They have years attached, fines, bans from employment, confiscations. Carl answers as precisely as he dares. He writes that he joined the party in 1937 because it was expected at the office. He writes that he never volunteered for the SA. He writes that he attended rallies because attendance was taken. He writes that his superior, now missing, ordered donations to winter relief. He signs with a hand that is not quite steady. He thinks of the ledger he balanced in 1942 for the utility, when forced labourers were assigned to the gasworks and the pay was tallied to a different column. He remembers the names on those lists. He does not write them in his answer. He writes that he kept the water flowing. He writes that bookkeeping is neutral. The mathematics of guilt is the most complicated arithmetic of all. It involves acts done, acts not done, orders given, orders obeyed, questions not asked, rumours set aside, and a long chain of consequences. The Spruchkammern drown in paper. Between 1946 and 1949, millions are processed. In the American zone alone, some 3.6 million cases take shape in files with the texture of aged cardboard. The statistics harden into a pattern. A tiny percentage is classified as Hauptschuldig, a slightly larger portion as Belastet. The word becomes a bridge across a ravine. The bridge is labeled stability. The system does not seek only justice. It seeks governability. The occupation authorities need civil servants who can run water and electricity, and schools and tax offices. The British experiment with a restrictive policy, then ease it when the lights threaten to go out. The French remove and then reappoint. The Soviets purge and replace with a new cadre drawn from anti-fascists and party loyalists. The Americans run the largest court system and then transfer it to German hands. There is a phrase whispered in corridors. Persilschein. A Purcell ticket, a certificate of exoneration as clean as a laundry detergent. A neighbor vouches for a neighbor, a priest signs a letter, a worker testifies that a foreman was not cruel. The testimonials are arranged like coins on a table. The Spruchkammer counts them. It weighs them. It declares a man a Mitläufer, and he returns quietly to his desk. Bundesarchiv records reveal the arc of a bureaucracy remaking itself. In town after town in the West, the names change less than you'd think. The titles shift. The signs are taken down and replaced. The work continues. It is not that nothing has changed. It is that what has changed is not always visible on the face that greets you at the counter. The arithmetic of files is cold. It does not show the heat of shame or the chill of denial. It only shows the flow of people through categories that make the new order function. Displaced persons arrive as a tide with no schedule. First come the survivors. Jews from camps, forced laborers, prisoners of war released and wandering. They gather in DP camps near German towns, Bergen-Belsen transformed, Landsberg am Lech, Fechenwald near Wolfratshausen. The occupation files list the head counts, 2,100 here, 9,100 there. Allied intelligence summaries record protests, demands for food, for emigration visas, for respect. In the streets, locals glance away when a column of gaunt men passes. Sometimes they hold the gaze, and something breaks in the air between them. Sometimes a woman from town slips a loaf of bread to a man in a striped jacket. Sometimes the loaf is refused. Sometimes the refusal is the only thing either will remember. Elsewhere come the expellees, millions of Germans expelled from the East, Silesia, East Prussia, the Sudetenland. The word Heimat becomes a peculiar kind of elegy. The trains bring families with bundles and a shock that does not leave the eyes. The arithmetic of displacement is brutal and ungainly. Between 1945 and 1949, over 12 million arrive in what will become West Germany. The towns are already in ruins. The locals have already parceled out the floors that remain. The Beilegungsbehörde, the housing office, is a place where stories collide. Men with the authority of a stamp assign rooms to strangers. A family of 4 sleeps in the kitchen, a family of 5 in the parlor, a widow at the end of the hall. Walls become curtains. Privacy becomes a memory of a thing. Refugee carts stand under the trees like farm tools. At night, bareness and resentment are neighbors. The arithmetic of scarce rooms is a ledger of anger. Who gets what space? Who moved out and where to? Whose ancestor plowed this field? Whose child coughs at night? The local files speak of tensions. The word is polite. A goat is slaughtered in a courtyard, and a man from Silesia remembers his village and cries. A woman from Munich locks her cupboard and remembers that it once contained sugar, and that she once had a husband to complain to about these indignities. A new party grows to represent the expellees, its acronym a mouthful, its meetings the stage for grief that seeks policy. The Lastenausgleichsgesetz of 1952, the burden-sharing law, becomes one way to give numbers to pain. It promises payments over years, a calculus of loss paid out in installments. The mathematics of restitution is a long sum solved by a civil servant you will never meet. The most painful encounters are not in offices, they are at fences. In the first months after surrender, Allied units require local Germans to walk through nearby camps. They produce films. They call them compulsory tours and show the roles of bodies to people who had chosen not to know. There are testimonies. We did not know, say some. We suspected, say others. We heard, say many. There are photographs taken by soldiers in April and May of open pits, of ovens, of the meticulous cruelty of a system that ran like an office. Carl writes one line in 1945 that he will copy into each new notebook, as though to keep it from blurring. I kept the numbers that kept the water flowing. He does not leave it unqualified. The water flowed to the barracks, too. He has read the posters. He has seen the newsreels where the Allied narrator's voice speaks German like a knife. He knows that what was done in his name, even if he never set foot at a camp. He writes, "If responsibility is a series of doors, I held a key to one of them." It is the closest he will come to saying the word guilt. In the winter of 1946-47, the cold becomes a new regime. It governs movement. It governs thought. There is a new poster on walls. The Colin Clow. The coal thief grins while stealing a lump from a cart, and the city burns him with its eyes while citizens remove a few shovels from train wagons in the fog. Schools close because there is no heat. The ration for fat sinks. The calories fall to numbers that are only possible if you do not move. Children grow hollow-cheeked. Old men fold. Farmers lock their barns, and cities hate them quietly. American occupation reports record the curve of the cold. Uranus 21, a monthly summary, lists frost, reduced work hours, increased sickness. The language is clinical. It must be. It is the language of governance, not of mourning. Carl feels his fingers quit him in the morning, when he must unlock the office and cannot hold the key. The office is the Municipal Supply Bureau. He has been assigned there because he knew the numbers before, and he knows them now. He wears a coat while issuing forms. He stamps permits for coal deliveries that will not arrive. His name appears on documents that the Bundesarchiv will one day catalogue, his signature a small wave on the page that recurs like a minor chord. The return of prisoners of war is a long breath held too long and released in gasps. In 1946, men come home in ones and twos. In 1947, in dozens. In 1949, in batches from the east that feel miraculous until you learn how many will never come. The train platforms host a ritual. A man steps down and looks for a face that will confirm that he has a place to step into. The face arrives or it does not. The arithmetic of return tallies presences and absences with a ruthlessness that equals war. The Dead Register is a book with a cover of old leather that sits in city halls. The clerk writes the names with a pen that scratches. Echoes. Politics re-enters the scene as a sequence of meetings in basements that smell of damp and coffee made from roasted barley. Parties reform. The SPD prints pamphlets. The new CDU writes catechisms of the social market economy. The communists speak of anti-fascism and land reform, and a new society that will not permit old crimes. The Cold War is not yet a phrase with capital letters, but the weather shifts. The Soviets try to draw the East into a new state. The Western zones debate economic integration. The British and Americans formed the bizone in January 1947. The French join later. The arithmetic of zones becomes the arithmetic of states. A line drawn across a map turns into a border that hardens into an idea. The Marshall Plan arrives as a ship in a photograph. It is not charity. It is strategy and economics, and the people who unload the crates do not care what its motive is. They care that the flour is good. They care that steel rails arrive to rebuild tracks. They care that machinery hums. In 1948, currency reform changes the arithmetic of daily life in a single day. The Deutsche Mark replaces the Reichsmark in the Western zones on 20 June. On 20 Shun, shop windows fill with goods that had disappeared for years. The black market cowers. Prices are set free. An American intelligence summary notes that spirits improve with a margin of skepticism. The Berliner jokes that before he had money and nothing to buy, now he has money and still not enough to buy what he wants, but he smiles when he says it. The Berlin blockade begins and the air fills with engines. The airlift is a physics problem solved by discipline. Planes land in a rhythm that becomes a heartbeat. Children count them and assign each a flavor. Sugar, chocolate, flour. The raisin bombers are not just a story, they are a clock that tells the city it is not forgotten. In Munich, far from the blockade, Karl watches the newspapers and thinks of arithmetic again. The arithmetic of alliances. How many planes per hour? How many calories per day for a city with 2 million mouths? How many tongues of one language speaking the policy of another? His job in the new order is the same job as the old, dressed in new words. The office is dingy. The desk scars are the same. The inkwell, the same. The forms are changed. Now they read Federal Republic. They bear the seal of a democracy that is being assembled out of patience and exhaustion. He balances supply and demand for the city's waterworks. He signs requisitions. He authorizes deliveries to factories that will become the engine of the Wirtschaftswunder. He attends a meeting where a man with a tidy moustache, no, not that kind, presents a plan for a new assembly line that will produce washing machines. The man's file shows membership in organizations once forbidden. His Sprüchkammer result is Mitläufer. He is not an aberration. He is the arithmetic of the Reconstruction. Schoolbooks soften the past like bread soaked in milk. Bombings are discussed as if they fell without hands to drop them. Expulsions are discussed in paragraphs that turn a wrench. Children learn dates, 1933, 1939, 1945. They are taught about resistance heroes in a list that fits on one page. They are shown photographs of German women sweeping rubble. They are not shown photographs of what lay inside the fences, unless a teacher is brave or reckless. There are public commemorations. Monuments to the victims of air raids are unveiled in ceremonies with black suits and solemn wreaths. The speeches speak of suffering. They do not begin with a sentence like Karl's. At home, the past sticks to boots. A daughter asks why there is a missing photograph on the mantel. An aunt says the frame broke. A son asks why his teacher says his grandfather was a hero. His mother says it is complicated. The word becomes a wall. In 1952, the Luxembourg Agreement. Wiedergutmachung commits money and goods to Israel and to Jewish organizations for survivors. It is a ledger with moral ink. The sums are inadequate to the arithmetic of what was taken and broken. There are protests on the street by those who say the country cannot afford to pay. There are protests by others who say the country cannot afford not to pay. Karl reads the paper and writes in his notebook, "A debt that has no decimal place demands to be written anyway." The Polizeipresidium files record the quiet return of men who wore dark uniforms and held power over permits and lives. Some have been away. Some have been here all along behind a desk with a letter from a pastor. They now carry new titles, and their offices are purged of portraits. They sit in the same chairs and stamp in a different era. The mathematics of institutional memory is not taught in school. It means that when a citizen goes to the counter, he meets a face that knows his father's name. It means that what can and cannot be said is shaped by what is remembered of who heard you speak in 1943. Occupational health reports describe the illnesses of a rebuilding society. Silicosis in the lungs of Trümmerfrauen, rickets in the bones of children born in the famine years, nervous troubles in men who sit up at night staring at a door that is closed and cannot be opened. There is a dialect for this too. Es wird schon, it will work out. Kopf hoch, keep your head up. These are not lies. They are scaffolding. They are deployed because the building must stand. The Cold War freezes narratives into positions. In the East, anti-fascism becomes the founding story. The purge is thorough where it is thorough, and where it is not, silence is enforced so hard it leaves a mark. In the West, oversights are explained as exigencies. There are files in the Bundesarchiv of men with names like Globke and Oberländer that will later become points of contention. But this is not their story. It is the story of a ledger man in Munich who knows his city's pipes, knows how to keep them from freezing, and knows that every form he signs is not just about water. It is about legitimacy. Allied intelligence summaries, written in an English that sounds like a manual, describe a transition in tone. Germans complain less loudly about rationing. They begin to complain more loudly about taxes. An assessment notes that the new democracy has, in the people's view, built its authority on order rather than on reckoning. The word reckoning is both too big and too small. The courts have spoken in famous trials. Judges have pronounced judgments in rooms with high ceilings and cameras, But in makeshift courts in gymnasiums and in offices like Karl's, decisions are made every day that hide the bones of the past in soft language. The Wirtschaftswunder arrives like a weather front. It is not a miracle. It is a product of work, policy, and a global conflict far away in Korea that draws German steel into open economies. It is trains that run on time. It is an assembly line that produces refrigerators that hum in kitchens that smelled of damp newspapers 3 years earlier. It is a wage that buys meat twice a week. It is a holiday on the Adriatic with a camera that captures sunlight on wet concrete and children with ice cream. The arithmetic of prosperity is intoxicating. It distracts. It heals. It also covers. Karl is promoted to deputy in the Water Bureau. He attends a seminar in Frankfurt on modernization. He receives a memo from Bonn about a nationwide data collection initiative. The memo speaks of resilience. It insists on uniformity. He complies. He is good at numbers and at compliance. This is his job. He marries late. He is kind to his wife. He is cordial to his colleagues. He is a man who can be counted on to close the office windows when clouds build over the city. He walks past a plaque near the university with the name of a professor who died in 1933. He pauses. He does not linger. He has an appointment. By the mid-1950s, the new state asks for soldiers again. The Bundeswehr is established in 1955. The public debate is loud. War feels like a word that belongs to older men and to new newspapers. A veteran walks with his shoulders unconsciously squared when a drum corps passes. A student watches with a disapproval he wears with the intensity of someone whose skin is too thin. Karl thinks of his brother's name written on a scrap of paper and folded in a drawer. He does not speak. He writes, "The present loves a clear line. The past resists it." An oral history recorded in the 1970s features a woman who as a girl passed bricks in 1945. She laughs when she says her hands were always dusty. She cries when she recalls the sound of silence after the last bombing ended. She says people were better then. She says people were worse then. She says both want to be true. The transcription has the unreliable punctuation of memory. It does not correct her. It preserves her contradictions because that is the only honest record. In 1958, the city unveils a new memorial to the victims of air raids. The mayor lays a wreath. The names of neighborhoods appear on brass plaques. A choir sings. The newspapers praise the city's capacity to mourn. In the same year, a small demonstration occurs near a courthouse where a former camp guard stands trial. There are shouts that this is necessary. There are mutters that this is old business. The trial proceeds. The verdict arrives. The arguments return home and quiet themselves in kitchens. The mathematics of accountability is not solved with one equation. It is solved, if solved at all, by iterations. Carl visits the cemetery on All Souls' Day. He stands before a headstone with names added later by hand, carved with less confidence than the stonecutter had in 1931 when the main name was inscribed. The dead are those who did not return, and those who returned to die from what they carried. The wind in the trees is a new language of the city. It is less military. It is more mercantile. Shops sell nylons and lamps without shades. A boy skates past a woman who cannot skate because something in her knee never healed. The boy calls back an apology and skates on. The school books his nieces use in 1960 have longer paragraphs about guilt. They include the photographs. They ask questions at the end of the chapter about responsibility. The teachers are of a new generation or of the old. The answers vary. The arithmetic shifts as the variables change. The students listen. Some hear. Some protect themselves. All must live with the sums their elders left them. Bundesarchiv records of occupation reports are reclassified and used by scholars who write books that few will read and that change how the few see the many. They sit at tables with files and write footnotes that make a story out of the logic of administration. They discover memos like the one Carl signed in 1942, authorizing the allocation of 2 additional laborers to the gasworks from a pool that was not called by its true name. They write about it with the precision of historians. They do not put their own breath into the paragraph because that is not their discipline. He reads an article in the newspaper about the past and about the failure to reckon with it. He feels the usual resistance rise, then falls away. He is older now. He thinks of the opening sentence in a notebook and the things that could not be spoken. He remembers a conversation in 1947 at a kitchen table with a woman whose cousin had been taken away and returned in a coat too big for him. He remembers not asking her the questions he would ask now. He writes in his notebook, "Silence was not only imposed. It was offered, and we took it." In the municipal office, the file cabinets from the 1930s have been replaced with new ones that glide more smoothly. The papers inside are in order. The accounts balance. The city runs. The stadium fills on Sundays with people who have money for a ticket and for beer. The orchestra season is sold out. The trolley runs on time. The water is clear and cold. It comes out of the tap because numbers were kept and forms were signed. This is both a triumph and a consequence. He keeps letters from the late 1940s in a drawer. A friend from school writes from a village near Rotschaw that is no longer in Germany. The letter is dated 12 February 1946. It is smudged. "We walked west the way a river runs," the friend writes. "My mother fell once, and we thought she would never rise. A farmer took us in, and we paid him with a key to a door that will not open again." The arithmetic of exile is keys and locks, and the rooms they no longer fit. The friend signs with a new street address in Hesse. A woman from the DP camp at Ferrenwald writes in 1948 a letter that arrived through a cousin of a cousin. It sits in Carl's drawer because he cannot throw it away, though it is not addressed to him. It says, "We are waiting for papers." It says, "We are alive." It says, "The dead have no arithmetic left, so we must do it for them." It is dated in a hand that presses hard. The address includes the word transient in English. Allied intelligence summaries in 1949 note a change in tone when people discuss Jews in public, fewer jokes in bars, fewer comments, more carefulness. The language is measured. The measurement is imprecise. Much remains behind the bar, behind the curtain in the parlor, behind the page in the notebook. Carl walks into a store in 1961 and buys a radio with a plastic casing that will not chip the way Bakelite did. He listens to a speech from the new capital in Bonn. The voice is steady. The words are about Europe and containment and peace through strength. He hears them as the continuation of something that began in the rubble with a curfew and a ration card and a fear that you would not eat tomorrow. He has eaten every day since 1947. He has been warm most nights since 1948. He has not slept well. He watches as the wall goes up in Berlin in August 1961. He measures it by newspapers, as always. He reads the column inches and thinks of maps that now add a line in indelible ink. He meets a man from Leipzig in a train compartment who will not meet his eyes when they discuss return. The line between East and West is not an abstraction, even this far south. It is a line that runs through factories and families and stories that children will not be able to tell without a footnote. He attends a ceremony in 1963 at the waterworks where a modern filtration system is inaugurated. The speeches are pure present. They speak of the future. They use numbers like capacity per hour and consumption per household. Carl loves numbers. He feels both pride and relief in their contours. He writes in his notebook that night, "The arithmetic of provision is clean when it stays in its lane. It becomes fog when it touches past crimes." When he goes to the library, he asks for the newspapers from 1933 and 1938 and 1942. He reads them, though he lived through them. He underlines nothing. He copies nothing. He is what he permitted. He feels the ink as wet again. He wonders if knowing the words better changes the words. He thinks little changes. He thinks some things change completely without showing it on their faces. On September 1964, he opens a new notebook. He writes, "A man is not only what he did, he is what he permitted. He is what he did not prevent. He is also what he repaired." He does not read it aloud. He does not have to. He can be sentimental when he permits himself. He is embarrassed by this. He visits the Viktualienmarkt and watches tourists look at sausages as though they are in a museum. He thinks of a time when a sausage cost a theatre ticket. He thinks of a time when the theatre was used for indoctrination and then for trials. He thinks of a time when his city did not have trams because the wires were on the ground and the ground was glass and ash. He thinks of a time when the city was a woman in a headscarf with a brick. He is invited to a reunion of municipal clerks. There are speeches and jokes about paper. There are jokes about stamps that never worked, and a requisition for a stamp, to requisition a stamp. They laugh too hard. They drink. He leaves early. He walks through the university quarter and stands before a plaque with the names of students who wrote leaflets in 1942 and threw them like petals and were arrested. He whispers, "Because that is what this place demands, I should have done more." He does not call this confession. He calls it a line in a notebook now spoke aloud to stone. The story of civil life in Germany after war is a series of ledgers. Some can be audited, some cannot. The mathematics of rubble is finite. It is accounted for with trucks and shovels. The arithmetic of guilt is not finite. It comes due on different days for different people and in different currencies. There are categories on paper. There are categories in the heart. They do not overlap neatly. In 1965, he cleans out a drawer. He finds a ration card from 1947. He holds it with the reverence a believer gives a relic. He finds the questionnaire from 1946 with his answers in careful script. He looks at his signature and sees his father's hand. He sees in his answers the carefulness of a man who understood the danger of being precise. He finds a photograph of men in striped jackets walking along a road. He did not take it. He never took such photographs. It was given to him by someone who wanted him to have it. He does not know why. He looks at the faces. He closes the drawer. The public life of the country moves through anniversaries. 15 years. 20. Each one a new opportunity to tell the story in a tone that seems right for that year. The story is never complete. Each time it bends toward the needs of the present. The needs are understandable. They do not absolve. A government of lawyers and economists chooses words that do not offend too many. A chorus of survivors and a smaller chorus of perpetrators choose words that defend and words that accuse. The sound is continuous and dissonant. Carl retires in 1969. He is given a fountain pen and a handshake. He is given a certificate that calls him indispensable, a word that makes him laugh. He walks home with the pen in his pocket and feels the weight of something that is not pen. He opens his latest notebook. He is disciplined. He writes at the top of every page the date and the weather. He writes the price of bread as though it matters. It matters. He thinks often of the DP camp near Munich and of the fact that it existed at all. He thinks of the expellees who asked him for signatures that would give them a room. He thinks of the men who returned from the East with hands that shook and names they could not say. He thinks of the water that came out of the tap because he arranged for it to come, and of those who drank it who did not care who had arranged it. This is normal. This is history. This is the exact point where history becomes normal, and where normal life steals past the place where reckoning should stand and waves as it goes by. He writes, "Denial is a perfect equation. It balances loss and comfort. It leaves the sum as it was." He adds a line, "Memory is a tax that keeps being assessed, and everyone knows how to avoid it if they choose." He knows that this is too neat. He knows neatness is the enemy of the truth he tried to write down in 1945. It is late. He reads the first page of the first notebook. He reads the sentence that once could not be spoken aloud. He reads it again to test if it still holds. He thinks of the faces of the Trümmerfrauen that summer. He thinks of the coals stolen and the shame. He thinks of the Fragebogen and the chambers where men spoke softly to preserve what they could. He thinks of the lists of the dead and the missing pinned to boards under station clocks. He thinks of a boy who called a plane a candy bomber, and of a man who called a cigarette a currency. He thinks of a woman who did not forgive him for something he was not sure how to name. He thinks of a country built on papers stamped by men who did not always say what needed saying. He writes finally in 1970, in a hand that has become firm again in its stiffness. "We agreed to silence so that the pipes would not freeze, so that the bread would be cut, so that the doors would open when we pushed them." The sentence is not proud. It is not penitent. It is a record. He is not a hero. He is not a hero. He is not a villain. He is one of the millions who made a city work again and made a history that could be lived with. The files in the archives are full of men like him whose signatures pile up like sediment. Scholars will read them and draw lines that connect each signature to a policy, a life. They will circle his name with a pencil. They will publish nothing about him because he is unremarkable. They will let him stand in for a category. He would accept that. He closes the notebook. He puts it on the shelf beside the others. He lays the fountain pen on the desk. He looks at his hands. They are not clean. They are not filthy. They are the hands that passed papers in a time when other men held guns. This is not an exoneration. It is a description. 17. May 1945. Munich, Maxvorstadt. In a notebook torn from an office ledger, a 36-year-old bookkeeper named Carl M. wrote in pencil, "We will build our peace on what we agree not to say." Decades later, he writes it again, with a steadier hand, and understands that the front line after 1945 ran through his memory and his paperwork, not across a battlefield.